All right, awesome. Hey, everyone. I'm really stoked to be here. Sorry for the pop-up in Jason's talk. That was me. Blame me. I'm joining the Zoom meeting here. So I told Sam that I couldn't believe that they wanted me to speak, but yet here I am. And let me go back and say that was a great talk by Jason. Holy crap. Well played, sir. But I will say a big thanks to Sam for making me follow Jason. I really appreciate that. But if this is destined to be a cluster, so be it. Let's get on with it. So Trickle Down PwnOnomics is going through how I went from having zero bug bounty experience to regularly experiencing success. So on the agenda today, we're going to talk about helpful things that I found to be helpful, that I wish I had known when I started out. I mean, that would have helped me reduce the number of mistakes I made in my overall approach to bug hunting. After that, I will be sufficiently embarrassed at the things I should have treated differently. And so to cancel those out, I want to visit a success story that I recently had and why the helpful things that I'm going to share mattered. Following that, we're going to have a word about everyone's favorite topic, so stay tuned for that. And then right before we finish, I would like to talk just for a second about duplicates. Yes, yeah, and I know that it's on there twice. So everyone's doing this who am I thing, so I guess I'll do it too. Who am I? My name's Daryl Domstead, aka Hateshaped. I work at Coalfire Labs as a penetration tester, and you can follow the great guys over there on our labs team on Twitter at Coalfire Labs. You can also follow and you can also block me on Twitter at Hateshaped with a D. If you choose to do so on Twitter, but forget the D, you're going to get to meet this friendly fellow. So go ahead and remember to add the D, or I guess you could follow us both. I mean, it seems nice enough. So I'm really hoping that this goes well, and I don't blow it. But regardless of how it goes, I still have one good thing going for me. I hope you all are familiar with Crack Meth Exec. If you aren't, believe me, you need it in your life. So the author of CME, Bite Bleeder, Marcello Savati, created the -- Daryl flag. And yeah, as I just mentioned, I am Daryl. If you haven't tried that flag, you need to do it. You will thank me later, and thank Marcello too, because he makes the best flags. It literally may be the most useful and amazing part of CME, hands down. So my handle, yeah, it is Hateshaped. I don't hate everyone. Ever since I found the internet, I have been bad at coming up with usernames, so I figured I needed to explain this just a little bit. So what's the explanation? To answer that, we need to go to an obvious source to understand it, the Drew Carey Show, obviously. And there we go. In a single episode, there's a plot. Drew had to pass an insurance physical he was fired. Didn't think he could pass, so he tagged in his buddy Lewis. The plot twist was the physical included a mental health screening, and Lewis is not quite all there upstairs. Lewis answered the questions how he thought Drew would. When he was asked to describe himself, he wrote, "Hatred shaped like a man." This was funny to me, so I started using "hatred shaped like a man" as my username, and once I had to type it twice, I shortened it. So Hateshaped. Like I said, always been bad. Too late to change it now. Okay, so next, so why am I even here, and why am I even qualified to talk about anything here? I didn't seek this talk out. Sam asked me to do it, and because Sam's awesome, and for the fact that it might help some folks, I agreed to give this talk, even though I generally don't kind of seek out this kind of thing because I'm super introverted and all that fun stuff. But anyways, I created my BugCrowd account in 2017, so I've only been doing bounties for about 9 to 10 months, and I really only get to hunt whenever I get free time, like most of us, but unfortunately that's usually never, and always when I'm sacrificing sleep after kids are out cold. So in my limited time of participating in bug bounties, I've had a little bit, I've had a decent run at it, and I'd like to just on the fly tie it into Jason's talk about in the part where he was parsing JavaScript targets, where he's talking about that and how that can be advantageous. So why did that come up All right, sorry about that. This is the one that was supposed to be there, but so this is what can happen when you do what he spoke about, and I'll speak to this specifically later. And I guess the success that I've had is going from 0 to this is probably why they wanted me to talk. I don't know. And they probably will end up regretting it. Anyways, when Sam asked me to give this talk, I was 74th on Bug Crowd. Since then, I gave up Bounty and Cold Turkey and have been working on putting this together. I'm 82 now, so maybe Sam and Bug Crowd can I don't know, grease this a little bit to help me get back to where I was. I mean, just kidding, but unless you'll do it, I'm not. But otherwise, just kidding. All right, so let's get to it. I can't believe InfoSec has really come to this. Basically, security researchers and InfoSec folks are under the impression that if you create anything without a cool name, it will be immediately dismissed as garbage. Content's great, but absolutely secondary to its associated name. At least we can track legit vulnerabilities scientifically, though. With that in mind, I came up with the name and definition: Trickle Down PwnOnomics, theory promoting the discovery and reduction of vulnerabilities on a bug bounty program as a means to stimulate my bank account. Obviously, that's just a play on trickle-down economics, which I know nothing about. And does it work? I don't know. I don't care. Who cares? It's about the name. So all these theories aside, I do think that the definition that I made up there hits on a lot of the reasons why we're actually participating in bug bounties. I mean, the goal of all of this is to really help companies who give two craps about security and to help them find flaws before someone else does and does unseemly things to them. I mean, obviously, it doesn't hurt if we make a little money in the process, but helping secure all the things is great. All of that sounds good, but where we are, but that begs the question: how do we get to the point where we're regularly finding cool bugs that are on the high side of P1, P2? And sounds like that Bug Crowd University is absolutely going to help. But as far as today is concerned, I'm going to try and speak to this as best I can. And hopefully after the talk, I will have shown some light on how I transitioned from the zero bug bounty experience, making dumb mistakes, to having a lot of success finding impactful bugs and regularly being paid for them. And with any luck, someone will learn something today. Oops. So what have I found to be helpful? Unfortunately, there's not really a way to tell someone do this, this, and this, and then you'll be able to fully understand how to find and exploit certain vulnerabilities. What I can do is share some of the things that I have experienced, and hopefully that will prove to be helpful to someone. So I'm going to go ahead and refer to the things I talk about as helpful things. That's great. So the first one is that I want to talk about is learning from the mistakes of others. And today, the others is going to equal me. Second, doing things that nobody else wants to do. Basically, automated tools are great, but manual analysis has really been where I have found a lot of my success up to today. Finally, continuous monitoring is helpful thing number 3, and it's not the kind you're really thinking of, but we'll get to that. So to get into this, helpful thing number 1: theories aren't proof. The first mistake I'm going to be admitting to today occurred in the process of me submitting the first bug I ever found. It begs the question: how much evidence do we actually need? So I found a page that allowed me to create a form on a target as an unauthenticated user. However, the server was super fragile. I mean, after I created a benign form successfully, I started to create one that was a bit more malicious. However, after the first attempt, the server became super unresponsive, and that happened. I went for about several minutes. After the second attempt, I knocked the thing over dead. So after that, there's obviously some issues in the fragility of the server. I decided to submit a report. Remember that this was the first bug bounty report I had ever submitted. And I even stated in the submission that I don't want to stress the server or violate any of the rules of the program, which is understandable to stay within the program rules and maybe staying out of jail. But the takeaway that I came from this is we shouldn't be submitting reports that have theoretical possibilities as the whole meat of the report. it's not enough. We need to give much more pertinent information as we can after the vulnerability has been proven. Then we can kind of ask if they need more, if they want us to prove it more, and then go into the theoretical space of things, but not before. So that ended up with, oh, that doesn't look as good as I thought it would, but it says no proof, no glory, and I got a P4 out of it, and the theoretical stuff didn't really help that. So the second mistake I'm going to admit to is basically don't go too fast. And I asked the question, at what point is a report warranted? The mistake that I'm going to describe here was due to rushing a submission in a private 15K on-demand program where I found a legitimate AngularJS template injection. That's right, I could do math inside of that. And the version in question was one such that I had multiple escapes that I could use. And since the program was just starting, I went and submitted it without even really giving much of an impact, which is a mistake in itself. So after I submitted it, I ended up getting prompted for that extra impact. And the problem that I faced there is I didn't realize that the vulnerable field that I could do my math in had a very limited character length that it allowed, which was validated server-side, and I couldn't fit the full payload there that I needed to actually get to the point where I needed. So the takeaway from this mistake was showing the associated risk of a bug actually does matter, even after proving the issue exists. So the result from this that I found was personal shame and a P5. All right, mistake number 3, scope can kill. What does that even mean? I submitted a report for an AWS bucket that was writable to anyone. However, if you take a closer look and read the description and the extra info, my mistake is pretty glaring and stupid. So basically, if the words hopefully and isn't a waste of time show up twice and even once in what you are writing as someone submitting bugs, I'd say that you might just not have, you might need a little bit more there, and you haven't done enough to prove that this asset is attributable to whoever you say that it is. So the takeaway from that is be sure an issue's in scope and even owned by the program. That's probably important. But I mean, in this case, most of everyone already knows that determining who owns a specific asset hosted on AWS or other places can be tricky. I can go register any bucket name of any company that exists, and that doesn't, if you report it, that's going to be thrown out like immediately. So the result of this, because I own it, the result of this was a lucky P4 because for some reason the program was happy that someone's trying to help them. With following up on that, my mistake there could have been worse because, I mean, there's this this guy. I don't really need to say much about this because I'm pretty sure most of you have been seen this report that was publicly disclosed. All I'll say here is the names of the innocent have been blurred, but yeah, don't do what that guy did. That's just great for scope. So the last mistake that I want to talk about is it's an interesting one because it's not necessarily a mistake as much as a learning experience. So the scenario is if multiple instances of a vulnerability are found, how should that be handled? Should multiple reports be submitted? Should the findings be aggregated into one report? So I found a site that had cross-site scripting everywhere. There's like 14 different ones within a couple pages. Basically, the parameters in those pages were vulnerable everywhere. So I went ahead and I submitted reports for all of them, 14 of them, and I ended up with 1 triage report and 13 not applicables. I mean, it seems like common sense. I've seen, not common sense, it seems like the consensus I have seen in multiple discussions that if a bug requires the program to change their code to fix the issue, it's a finding that stands alone. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone here can see the minor flaw in that, the flaw being we have to trust programs to tell us if one change fixes everything or if each submitted vulnerability requires a specific change to fix because we don't have access to the source code. But I guess the takeaway from this learning experience was submit an aggregate report and trust programs will truthfully tell us if one changes if one change fixes everything. I guess I always would love to hear everyone's take on that after this talk for sure. So I'm done with the mistakes. Let's start talking about helpful thing number 2, which is relying on manual analysis on top of using automated tools. I know this is helpful thing number 2, but this was absolutely the most important thing I found in my success. I think along with this, I'd estimate at least half of the bugs that I've submitted that were paid have been through manually analyzing the content that I'm seeing that's available to everyone. So doing everything else nobody wants to do, what am I talking about? I'm talking about manually browsing the full site, that's a given, reading the HTML and JavaScript, reading any and all product documentation, that's help documentation to administer any server you can find. I mean, cyberstock developers, if you can, reading code on GitHub, reading Twitter feeds, reading Reddit, reading Google, Stack Overflow, blogs, forums, wherever you can get any kind of information. Basically, read all the everything, as creative a sentence as that is. Basically, if you do that and you do it manually, you can basically figure out if you've had a successful session of bug hunting or not based on if you feel like this. If you do, I would submit that you're doing a good job, because your eyes are going to want to bleed after reading as much JavaScript as I do. Don't get me wrong, automated tools are great and I use them on every target. Some of them just appeared right there. I really like JS Parser from Nahamsek, and Link Finder by Gerben Javato is also pretty great. But if you refer back to one of the first slides where I showed bounties that I got, and all of the 10K bounties that I've got to date have been found myself manually. So let's move on to number 3, helpful thing number 3, continuous monitoring. And this is not necessarily the kind that you're used to associating with continuous monitoring. What am I referring to is I religiously monitor everything new in the bug bounty and penetration testing worlds. I read everything from those places I can get my hands on. Obviously, for the entertainment factor, cool exploits are great, and I love InfoSec, but also to see how other researchers are testing things. So, I mean, Twitter and blogs, but I follow an obscene number of blogs, RSS feeds, read every full disclosure that I can. Obviously, HackerOne Hacktivity is great for laughs and for cool bugs. But after that, how do I, the question becomes, what do I do with the information I have? For example, after seeing a blog post of how a researcher exploits a certain issue, I literally try to figure it out. Like, would I have found that bug? If the answer is yes, I still will compare how I think I could have found the issue and how the author of the blog post just found it. If I think the answer is no, which is a lot of times is the case, I try to figure out what I'm not doing. What am I not doing that would make me miss it? And then I go about trying to figure out how to fill the gaps between the two. Now, similar to helpful thing number 2, where we cyberstock developers, another thing I do is this. Yes, that is the result of scraping BugCrowd public rankings via cron job daily, all while being alerted to someone new rising in the ranks so I can follow them, hopefully to learn what they know that I don't. Just as an interesting thing that I'm not sure anyone else does, which is fine, because it's proven good on one bounty so far. All right, so enough of my fails, my great, terrible, embarrassing stuff. Yeah, I'm glad that's done. But one last word about that. Feel free to troll me all day long on Twitter or abuse me in the chat here. I don't care. It'll be fun. Anyhow, among all the failures, this is one of my favorite success stories. And so let me quickly set the scene here. So I found a site that had a target scope of anything owned by the program was fair game. So the recon I did, this isn't a recon talk, and suffice it to say, it was done. Remember to do it too. Plus, Jason just gave you the gospel on recon, and if you wait another few minutes, you'll score a sweet recon talk by Yamakura. But don't I don't want to fill you up completely before the main course, obviously, but after finishing the recon that I did on the target, I found that a web server was listening on a non-standard port. Though the login page had a logo for WebCTRL exposed. And as I read the source of the page, I noticed that there was a reference to a help manual hosted on the application itself. So after following that link to the help manual hosted on the target, remember reading any and all product documentation, everything, right? That's right, I read it all. Despite reading it all, noting interesting functionality, and trying to access the functions, I was no closer to figuring this out. All the interesting functionality that I read about was behind authentication on the site. However, from the main table of contents, I was able to ascertain that the version of the application was version 6.1, and after researching associated vulnerabilities with that version, I found claims that this version was vulnerable to this CVE, which contained an unauthenticated external entity injection. So they say it's vulnerable, but the type of disclosure is the one we all know, that's the stupid kind of disclosure. According to the CVE, there was no publicly available exploit code associated with the CVE. I checked MITRE, Semantic Bit, Exploit DB, plenty of sketchy forums, the good kind, and just anything I could get my hands on. And I mean, of course, that had to be one of those bullcrap undisclosed vulnerabilities. I mean, no exploit? Come on, man. Well, thanks, Keyshawn. Luckily, I was bored, and I said, challenge accepted. Screw it. I'm going to find that XXE. It's unauthenticated. How many places could it be hiding? Fast forward many painstaking hours later, no closer to finding the vuln. I realized that one of my favorite burp extensions, Burp Collaborator, it wasn't loaded for whatever reason. So I enabled Collaborator, and I browsed all of the initial page, yes, all of one page, and then I saw the beautiful red text flashing in Burp. So I found Collaborator pingback for the XWAP profile header, which most of these pingbacks, there's a handy guide for them in cracking the lens, targeting HTTP's hidden attack service by James Kettle, which is just awesome. And since Mr. Kettle already described the header well in the blog post previously, I'm going to borrow his description, but give him all the credits. Absolutely give it to him. So this is what we know about that header. The XWAP profile header is an ancient header which should specify a URL to the device's user agent profile, which is an XML document which defines capabilities. Compliant applications extract the URL from this header, fetch and parse the specified XML document so you can tailor the content they supply. And this risk of two high pieces of functionality, fetching untrusted URLs and parsing untrusted XML with obscure and easily missed functionality, seems ripe for exploitation. So if James Kettle thinks it's super exploitable, a possibility of that, I like where I stand here. So I absolutely love HighRisk functionality, specifically fetching untrusted URLs and parsing XML. How much better can it really get? So the application itself did not add that header by default, but if you did add it, it was more than happy to go and fetch whatever URL you gave it. And in this case, as you can see in the screenshot there, I told it to go and fetch my totally not malicious XML payload from my VPS. So despite the assurances that I gave initially in the file name to the application, that XML was absolutely malicious. So after the application retrieved my XML file, parsed the file, and parsed it, it found a second reference to a DTD file hosted on the VPS, where this is also where I told the truth to the vulnerability about the previous malicious XML file. So I gave it my OKILI DTD file, which it was parsed, and because of external entities being enabled, the application parsed it and ultimately sent the contents of a file that I told it to my VPS, and there's the win. So at this point, I basically assumed that I had found the vulnerability covered by the CVE that I referenced before. I mean, it covered an XXC that was unauthenticated, and I found an out-of-bound XXC that was unauthenticated. But in the off chance that it wasn't the same issue, I decided to contact Automated Logic, who creates that product. Real quick, let me just give kudos to them. It was very impressive to see that they responded within 12 hours and their extreme willingness to review the findings that I had. And from those conversations, I was able to ascertain that this wasn't the CVE that I thought I had found, but instead, it was this one, which is now the one that I'm going to be disclosing right now, which is awesome. So we have a CVE, and this wasn't a bug bounty program. So what happened? Can it get much better? Turns out a lot better. So I submitted the bug, got triaged quickly, and which is always an awesome feeling on its own, but even better in this instance now that I had that CVE in my back pocket until this happened. It turns out that the program had absolutely owned the IP address range in the past, but not for several years. The Arent record hadn't been updated, and unfortunately, my report went from triage to not applicable. But I guess I did get a consolation CVE plus a recon win out of it. So real high level, what happened is I found a target, which was not super difficult, with a wide open scope, browsed all available content, spidered it, did brute force discovery iteratively. I read all the help manual, found the probable version, found a possible CVE associated with it, with no exploit published. But knowing that the system was vulnerable to an unauthenticated XXC, I did a ton of research, found nothing, realized burp, collaborator was off and enabled it, and on Q, James Kettle found me a nice potential issue. And then through trial and error, I constructed a payload that worked and came to find out that I got a CVE out of it. Anyways, now I have to apologize for our next slide. Sorry, I missed some clicks apparently. Reporting, that's everyone's favorite. Can we really have a presentation without mention to it? Not for me, I guess. So I just wanted to quickly say that details may be obvious. Many of us participating in these bounties understand the risk and issues that we report, and the triagers do as well. But that does not mean that each program understands this to the same level. We may assume the inherent risks of some bugs are absolutely obvious, but we shouldn't be we shouldn't feel that they are obvious. So what we need to be reporting everything that we can in detailed descriptions, and this can only help in our actual goals of getting higher payouts. I mean, you can absolutely tell when you write a report and a program is happy and they are grateful for the level of detail that you actually get. So Jason also alluded to how he does it, where he has templates ready to go in his workflows. So along with him, I'm going to second and say write things once and write things well. I mean, findings can be written in a program agnostic way, such that, I mean, you can have a template ready that's basically 95% done for any program that adequately explains the issue, and all you have to do is tailor the specifics of the particular bug to your template, which is such a time saver, and your reports are good if you write them good from the beginning. Also, I've noticed that that at least for the bugs I've submitted, more often than not, the severity set by the triager is the severity that is accepted by the program. I mean, so basically we're here to convince the triagers of the risk and the bug that we're describing, and whether or not a higher priority rating is warranted. Remember my mistake number one: theories are not proof, which is very helpful in this scenario. A little pro tip in here: when writing reports, make sure you make edits like you. That might be the most important point of reporting. Just go ahead and say that. Final report point is anytime you have a proof of concept that is super hard to reproduce, record it. I've written proof of concepts that are so long, and there might be a disconnect in how I write it and how they receive it in the triage. So if you can write the POC but give the video, that just saves so much time for everyone. So one of the last things I wanted to talk about, I mean, it isn't like I have to tell anyone listening that there's some frustration involved at times with bug bounties. We have all had the simultaneous fortune of finding awesome things, but also the misfortune of our awesome things being marked as duplicate. And trust me, this isn't a sob story. This is just an example. So March 2018, it was a dark month for me. It was one of the best months I had finding-wise, but it was one of the worst payout-wise. You're reading that correctly in that I have 5 P1 duplicates, 1 P1 triaged, and then 1 P1 marked NA. Yes, you are. Oh, dang it. Too early. Then it got marked as NA, and you've already heard that story a minute ago. Anyways, there's only one satisfying solution that I've come up with to deal with duplicates, and you saw about 2 seconds of it already, but here you are. See, there's that momentary satisfaction, and I believe it's better than nothing. And yeah, that's the best solution in that. Just going all crazy on your setup to placate yourself from the issues that you found that are duplicates. So for a summary, I mean, the best advice that I can give is tools are great, but they don't make up for things that we don't know yet. They can actually hold us back. I mean, at least for me, I've embraced manual testing and discovery, and I'm so glad I did based on some of the findings that I've come up with to date. So the next one is be honest with yourself. Know what you know, but then know what you don't. And once you know that, fill in the gaps. Read everything, both in targets you're testing, about targets you're testing, and especially everything new that is publicly released by the researchers in this community. And then after you've done that, read it again. And then finally, most importantly, just take the advice that so many in this community freely give. That's been another helpful aspect that I've been able to incorporate in how I test things. And with that, we've come to our end. And any questions?
So we will see if anyone pops any questions in. We're actually over time, so I think what we'll probably do is Hateshaped. Are you hanging out in the Twitch chat at all?
Yeah, I'll be joining it right now.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Daryl will be hanging out in chat, but definitely please throw him in some applause in the chat and give him thanks for this awesome presentation. I don't know, Daryl, if you were watching chat, but you definitely have a lot of fans in our Twitch chat today, so great job.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, and for everyone that's watching, this is automatically archived on our Twitch channel, so you can actually just scrub back if you go to the videos tab on our Twitch profile, and we'll have this up on YouTube within the next day or two. We'll see. I'm going to see Han Solo tonight, and then tomorrow I think I'm going to edit the videos. That's the plan.
Priority's great.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Daryl, and we will get Barath set up here in a second.